Welcome back out on the mushroom trail. It's a beautiful fall day. Colors are changing, and the rain continues to drop. This forest is just coming alive with new mushrooms popping up by the hour, by the day. Let's jump in. Let's see what we see. And just off the trail, here's a shining example of the one that many of you are out on the prowl searching for right now. This, of course, an example of the Pacific golden chanterelle, Cantharellus formosus. Nice decurrent, vein-like ridges running down the stipe, often showing up in pairs. Again, these are having to work hard to push up through the mossy duff, but here they are, in abundance. And boy, I tell you, now that the rains have really started falling, these are just showing up everywhere. We see we've got a little Pacific golden chanterelle down there. Over here, we've got ones that are a little bit more established. Now, I'm hoping, if we can stay up above freezing and avoid that hard freeze, I see no reason why these won't continue. Looks like this guy's maybe pinned underneath these branches. That tends to happen with these. We'll go ahead and free that, give it a little tug, and we'll take a look underneath, see what we're looking at. Look at that. Beautiful example of the Pacific golden chanterelle. And just like we saw a second ago, these guys often come in pairs. So where we see one, we often see at least another, sometimes many more. Again, beautiful kind of chanterelle, yellow, orange. Look at that wavy margin. So these are getting plenty of moisture now to really fruit out and do their thing. And notice those ridges run clear down the stipe, not stopping at an even line, but just kind of working their way down the stipe, forking, veining, all that good stuff. And when we look under here, we see that one. That one's a little small for me to want to harvest. Here we go. I knew that there would be another hiding out. We'll snag that one, see what else we see out here. Now this time of year, we're finding so many chanterelles that I suppose it's a good idea to hit the pause button and to examine some of our lookalikes. So take a look at this. Growing from wood, we've got what's commonly referred to as the false chanterelle, Hygrophoropsis aurantiaca. Notice, even though the cap is a similar color to our golden chanterelles out here, underneath we're met with a very different sight. So rather than those kind of ridge-like veins that run decurrently down the stipe, on this one we've got blade-like gills. Now they're also decurrent running down the stipe, but they're a much different structure. They're a little bit forked or veined, but these are true gills as opposed to ridges. And again, that cap can really fake us out. It's a similar color, but notice that the stipe stature is also different. And if I were to break this open, it wouldn't have that bright white flesh that breaks like string cheese. And again, sometimes it's hard to tell that these are growing from wood because that can be buried, but that's also a key difference. And take a look at this, just off trail, hiding under these sword ferns. We've got none other than the Pacific golden chanterelle. This one devoured by a forest creature of some sort. But remember, these tend to come in pairs, so don't forget to look for its friend. This one looks great, and I think I'll leave that other one behind for the creatures or less picky humans. And look at this little guy, just off trail, a little too small for me to necessarily want to forage, but it caught my eye and made me slow down. And look at this. Hiding in and amongst the salal, a beautiful pair of Pacific golden chanterelles. And just like that, we're right back in them. And oftentimes among mushroom hunters, there's sort of a myth that you need to get way off trail to find this secret Shangri-La hiding place of these great big patches of chanterelles. But in my experience, a lot of the best little spots oftentimes occur literally right off of well-trafficked trails. So, don't sleep on these ones that are popping out just trailside. And I do feel like I'm consistently rewarded by just that simple act of slowing down, moving slow. Once you spot one, you know there's more around. And oftentimes people are all too eager to move on to the next spot. But sometimes it really pays to just slow down, move slow. Oh man, look at that cluster. And take a look at this. Here's someone who knows all about moving slow and looking around. This is what's commonly referred to as the Pacific Sideband. And this is actually our largest native terrestrial snail in the Pacific Northwest. This is a super cool little creature. And this is, a native species of snail. So a lot of times if you're working in a garden, say in Seattle, you may see some snails that are introduced. But this guy here is part of the original ecosystem. And there's a lot of things about this snail that I find to be particularly interesting. So for one thing, you'll see these guys out and about after a hard rain, maybe even at night. Those are the two times that these guys tend to be out on the prowl, moving about. So they're really sensitive to moisture. And believe it or not, they'll actually go into a hibernation period during the winter or during especially dry periods in the summer. So sometimes these are referred to as the rotten garlic snail. And the reason why is if they're disturbed, they'll actually emit what's generally regarded as a not great smell. So, and these are one of our detritivores. So, similar to mushrooms and fungi out here in the forest, this is one of our decomposers, but the way that they go about decomposing things is different than fungi. We can think of detritivores as things like termites and millipedes and snails and slugs. Think of it as things that have teeth. So these are like the great natural recyclers of the forest. Whereas the fungi, those are more like the chemists of the forest. So they're generally breaking things down using enzymes and chemistry to recycle nutrients into the forest. But both are playing really similar and vital roles out here. And believe it or not, this particular guy, it's like there's a mosaic of subspecies that are endemic to really small areas. So there may be a single valley or a single mountain slope that has a subspecies of these Pacific sidebands. So they're quite an interesting creature. I'd encourage you to check them out. And, if you come across one in the forest, take some time to admire this guy. What a beauty, right? So I was just moseying down this trail and was absolutely shocked by what I saw. Check this out. So pulled out of the ground and just laying here along the trail is arguably the tastiest mushroom that you can find in this Doug fir hemlock lowland forest. This is what's commonly referred to as the fiber king bolete, or fib king for short, sometimes chocolate king. This is Boletus fibrillosis. And we've got a young mushroom. Notice that white, kind of tightly poured sponge layer underneath. We see a little reticulation in there at the base. That's that netting or webbing that's so typical of king boletes. And up top on the cap, we see this smooth, at this stage it's a reddish-brown cap because it's so young. In time, this sponge layer will turn a little more kind of yellow to yellow-greenish, and that cap will oftentimes get a little bit darker brown. Look at this, too. It's got this rooting base. Boy, this is really a beautiful, beautiful mushroom with quite a bit of heft. And the stature of these can be quite diverse. This one has a classic kind of king bolete, porcini-like look. And boy, the rooting base on this one, this is such a prime example that I don't always see. Boy, you can hear how firm and dense the flesh of this mushroom is. These are really known for this, as is the case with all of these king boletes. This is a really, really special mushroom that has a lot of culinary use. And again, this is the only king bolete that pairs with Douglas fir. So when you're in these lowland kind of Doug fir, hemlock forest. I don't love seeing that this has been thrashed and clawed by some forest creature or animal of some sort. But let's give it a center cut. Let's see what it's looking like in the middle here. Boy, looks good. Let's take a closer look. Wow. Oops. Let's take a look. So you know, this is a young mushroom. I can tell it's got a little bit of bug damage, but boy, not much. This is a nice looking Fiber King Bolete. What a treat. And just nearby, here's another example of another one of our boletes, but this one of our slippery jacks in the Suillus genus. Notice we'll give this a little bit of a tug. Look underneath. Now notice we've got this yellow sponge layer. We also see that partial veil or little ring evidence. This one is smooth up top, and this is going to be a little slippery or viscid up top, but not to the same degree as some of our other slippery jacks. This one is what's commonly referred to as the fat jack, Suillus caerulescens. And, you know, we've got another one over here. Now, in terms of these slippery jacks, this tends to be one of the preferred ones. You can see a little button down here. At first, I thought that this was going to be one of our Gomphidius slime spikes that works off of the mycelium of our Suillus mushrooms out here. But in fact, it's just a very young fat jack that's still in the process of budding out here. And we can see where that's been nibbled on. You can see the sponge layer. But again, this is the slippery jack that's oftentimes sought out. I don't necessarily forage this often, but I see people doing it, especially old timers. And check this out. This is amazing. This is arguably, some will say, the tastiest mushroom that you can find out here in the forests of the Pacific Northwest. This is the cauliflower mushroom, Sparassis radicata. Now, someone beat me to this. So if that was you, congrats. Let me know in the comments. But the thing that really stands out to me is that this is occurring in the exact same spot that I found this same mushroom last year, which I've always heard stories of that, and I've always checked back religiously. But this is the first time that that's happened for me personally. And even though there's a little bit of this left that I could forage, I think I'm just going to throw a fern over this, let it continue to do its thing out here. There's rumor that if you don't pull this up and that you just cut it and leave that deep tap root intact, it'll come up again. Seems to have worked this year. We'll see if it comes back next year. You know I'll be checking. And just up here, take a look at this. What do we have hiding here under the needles and duff? At first glance, you may think this looks like a Pacific golden chanterelle, but I beg to differ. Let me give it a little tug. We'll investigate more closely, and we'll see. And yeah, look, so what we've got here, this is the white chanterelle, Cantharellus subalbidus. Beautiful, light, kind of ivory color. Look at those decurrent ridges running down the stipe. What a beauty. And you can see this has been out here a while. So you'll notice, look at how those edges have started to yellow. The white chanterelle will do that as it starts to dry out or age, or even when it's handled. It'll oftentimes kind of turn a golden or yellowish color, but this is undoubtedly the white chanterelle. Here's the hole I plucked it from. I can't help but notice that there's another one here. I'm going to fill both of those in. I have a sneaking suspicion that a squirrel or some other creature likely snagged one of these white chanterelles before I arrived, but I suspect there's more hiding under the moss and duff. I wonder if we'll be able to dig any more of these up. Hopefully so. And sure enough, it looks like we've got another white chanterelle or two hiding out underneath the duff. The question will be whether or not these are still good. A lot of times I feel like the season on these white chanterelles is a little shorter than the goldens. Oh yeah, and look at that. So this one fairly well beginning that rotting process or beginning to decompose. I think that's the problem. The rain has started to fall, and for those of the white chanterelles that haven't successfully broke out of the duff and moss, they've just gotten drenched and started to just kind of rot and decay, but still a beautiful mushroom to investigate. I feel lucky that we even got that one to bring home with us. Look at this. Look at how in age this will get these little lateral kind of cross veins. We get these really kind of pronounced structures rather than just the simple decurrent veins or ridges. They turn into almost a little work of art here. So very cool to observe. Obviously I'm going to leave these two behind. They're a little past their prime, but still fun to see. And check this out. So we've got some more kind of scraps that look to be from Suillus mushrooms, likely the fat jack, Suillus caerulescens. We'll see if we can confirm that one way or the other here as we investigate in more detail. But funny, you know, I referenced the old timers sometimes harvest this. Someone once told me a story of being out matsutake hunting, and this Eastern European mushroom hunters were leaving behind all the matsutakes, but they were taking every single slippery jack they could find. So different tastes for different people. There's different things we're out for. We can see this little sponge layer here. This, again, really distinctive of the Suillus. And lo and behold, look what we've got here. So this is the Blackening Slime Spike, Gomphidius oregonensis. This is really cool. These Gomphidius mushrooms and slime spikes, so Crugophis as well, they'll actually be parasitic, or they'll work off of the mycelium of the Suillus mushrooms. So, and specifically, this is, I think, really, really cool, is they seem to have a distinct preference, so species to species. So this one, the Blackening Slime Spike, Gomphidius oregonensis, this confirms in my mind that we were looking at the fat jack, Suillus caerulescens, because this will specifically pair with that distinct species of Suillus. So if you're ever kind of identifying your boletes and you're struggling, especially with these Suillus mushrooms, to identify what's what, take a look and see which type of slime spike is nearby. Now notice, you can see how it gets that name. Look at the cap, how viscid. All those little needles and dirt and duff are sticking to this, as is so often the case. We also see, here's where I pulled it, notice that we've got this yellow stipe or base. That's, again, very distinctive of these slime spikes. And so definitely an interesting mushroom. Now this one is also edible. It's not one that I've ever indulged in. Let me know if you've tried this out. And I just had the pop back on to kind of display this. So again, we've got this yellowing stipe or base. But look, as I continued to kind of poke around near this blackening slime spike, look what I found hiding out here behind the blackberry leaves. We've got a much better example of the fat jack, Suillus caerulescens. Give it a tug. And again, so just to kind of look at this, we see that white mycelium kind of hanging off the stipe or base. We've got this yellow sponge with these elongated pores. Just a really good look at a prime example of the fat jack. And again, of the Suillus mushrooms, this tends to be the one that people prefer by most accounts. It still can be slimy, but you can see it's a little bit less slimy than a lot of the other slippery jacks. So it can be a little better to work with. Oftentimes when people are using this, I think the go-to method, sometimes people will eat it fresh, but a lot of people will dry and then powder this. And that tends to be, you know, a source of umami to add to soups and stews and broths and the like. So interesting mushroom, just figured I'd point out that association. And take a look just up the trail here. We've got one of my favorite mushrooms to bump into this time of year. This is what's commonly referred to as Trembling Phlebia, Phlebia tremellosa. Sometimes it's also referred to as jelly rot, or, even the Latin name previously was referred to as Caerulescens tremellosa. So you may know it by different names, but really a beautiful mushroom to bump into out here. And that Latin genus Phlebia means veined. And when you look underneath the caps of these, you see those kind of pinkish veins. The colors can sometimes vary, but notice that it's got this gelatinous cap. So that's the tremellosa part. So a lot of times if this is knocked or disturbed, it'll kind of move or tremble in a way similar to, say, like a cube of jello or something of that nature. So it's got a really distinct kind of characteristic, and every time that I slow down to stop to look at these, I'm continually amazed by just these otherworldly, cavernous little realms that reveal themselves underneath the cap of these. Now, this particular one will show up on both conifers and hardwoods. So you'll see it on fallen logs and stumps and standing snags, but always just a particularly beautiful mushroom to spend time with. Just look at that. Isn't that something? So oftentimes you may see this kind of layered shelf-like growth off the side or edge of logs. Sometimes it's subtle. Other times they kind of take over logs, similar to what we're seeing here. But I just want to point out really quickly that sometimes you'll see a totally different type of growth. So notice up here we've got this resupinate, kind of crust-like flattened radial patch. So it kind of depends on what, the growing situation is for this one. It can take on different forms and different looks. And isn't this beautiful? You can kind of see that jelly-like look, especially at the margin or at the edge of these particular patches. Isn't that something? And if we look down here, so notice that we've got the shelves kind of coming out from the sides or edges. And you can tell how the cap of that almost looks furry. It's got this kind of gelatinous, crystalline growth. Sometimes people compare it to bacon fat, the way that it looks. And just look at the way that the light's catching this one. I always feel like, it kind of reminds me of some sort of marine creature or coral, something that's kind of a little bit out of place out here in the forest. Really stands out as being especially unique. And for me, this one's all about the textures. Take a look underneath, you see that veined surface, but up top, we've got this just shiny, gelatinous growth with a little bit of fuzzy or hairy look on the cap. It's just such an interesting range of texture to be found out here growing from this log. Really something to marvel at. So take some time, slow down, look closely. What a gem, right? And it goes without saying that if you've got a hand lens, this is an especially good one, I feel, to take a close look at, because it always amazes me how easy it is to just kind of glance down at a mushroom like this that you see and just to stroll right by it. A lot of times if it's not an edible kind of culinary foraging mushroom that we're on the lookout for, we have a tendency to just pass right by. But take a sec to check this one out. And one last thing that I want to mention about this one. So it's one of the great decomposers out here. So this is a white rot decayer that again can show up on both coniferous and hardwood logs and stumps and snags. So, this one though, one of the great decomposers, and for that reason, it's been getting quite a bit of attention in regards to its potential in mycoremediation. So this again is that idea of taking, toxic biochemicals that find their way into the environment. Mushrooms have really been looked at as a potential source of dealing with those toxic biochemicals. And this one in particular shows a tremendous amount of potential. So it's possible that we might be hearing a lot more about this in the not too distant future. And just up the trail here, growing from a couple of red alder logs, we've got the perfect mushroom to discuss after talking about Trembling Phlebia. This is a closely related mushroom. This is Phlebia radiata. And notice you're seeing these hints of orange. This is a really, really vibrant orange, and this is completely engulfing this log in these crust-like patches that again have these orange tones. Let's zoom in and take a closer look at this close relative of Trembling Phlebia. So take a look all down this log, covering all the little gaps and patches and crevices. We've got this Phlebia radiata, and you can see it clear down the log. This is really a stunner, and it's something that is really eye-catching. I've actually been watching this log since the first little indications of growth began, and at that time it was really difficult to identify. But as time has passed, it's displayed more of its character. And you know, with Trembling Phlebia, we talked about that patch-like resupinate phase, right, where it forms these radiating little flat patches or growths. Now this one only really displays that form, so you're not going to see, real distinct caps or shelves growing off of the edges of these logs. What you will see is this patchy, kind of radiating, orangish colored patch forming, and usually, typically, on red alder. And I can't help but continue to think that, boy, the camera really isn't picking up the true vibrancy. I mean, this is a really, really bright, vibrant orange, and it's just engulfing this alder log. And so I mentioned a second ago, so this can occur on other woods, but here in the Pacific Northwest, this has a specific love for red alder. So that's where you're going to tend to see it. And down here, boy, yeah, that orange, look at that. Isn't that something? And so, this is going to show up this time of year. It's not really as common, at least in my experience, it's not as common as Trembling Phlebia. Boy, look at that fern just getting swallowed there. You can see all up and down this log, this is a really good example of that crust-like formation or patch. Now it's worth noting too, Aurora notes in Mushrooms Demystified, his classic read, he says this one isn't edible, but it looks like it's already been eaten. He compares it to, I think, dog vomit, if I'm not mistaken, or regurgitated dog food or something like that. I don't know if that's doing this one justice, to be honest, but it's kind of funny. A lot of his humor does not go unnoticed or unappreciated, so I always think of that when I see this one out here in the forest. And because I don't see this one as often as some of the others, I just figured I wanted to make sure to err on the side of giving you plenty of footage so that you can really look at this one and study it and appreciate it. It's just, it's got a certain character all its own out here, and I always love bumping into it. I also wanted to give you a quick look at just kind of the overall character of a well-developed Phlebia radiata. And we referenced this a second ago, but look at how it just kind of swallowed or grew right around this little sword fern. Isn't that something? No troubles there, just kind of did its thing, grew right around it. I always think that that's really cool to see or to observe when that happens. We see that with a lot of different mushrooms out here. So as you're poking around out in the forest this fall, rummaging about, looking for all these delicious wild edible mushrooms, don't forget to take some time to stop, to admire all these kind of other unique oddities, whether it's a mushroom or a plant or a tree or a bird or what have you. You know, anytime that we find ourselves out here in the forest, we become a part of it, and there's so much going on out here any given day. I think it's a good practice or a good exercise just to take some time to move slowly, look around, and appreciate all the beauty that's going on all around us all the time. Really is something. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Mushroom Trail, and I hope that the fall foraging season is treating you all well. Until next time, happy trails.